The meeting hall of the Galactic Coalition gleamed with polished silver walls, glowing banners and rows of high-backed chairs designed for the many different species gathered there. The air shimmered with faint energy fields, translating every word into dozens of languages at once. It was supposed to be a place of unity, where the greatest minds of the galaxy came together to share knowledge and protect each other. But for Captain Darius Kane, the room always felt colder than the vacuum of space. He stood near the back, hands folded behind his back, his broad shoulders straight as a soldier's could be. His uniform was plain compared to the flowing robes, armored shells, or crystal insignias of the alien envoys. But it wasn't his clothes that drew attention. It was his face. Across his right cheek stretched a jagged scar cutting down toward his jawline. Another crossed his brow like a lightning bolt, just above a gray eye that had seen too many battlefields. His forearms bore the faint lines of old burns, visible even through the cuff of his uniform sleeve. They were not the polished skin of someone grown in a healing vat. They were human scars, rough, imperfect, and permanent, and the aliens noticed. The delegates tried to hide their expressions, but the whispers carried. The reptilian Korth clicked their tongues softly as though disgusted. The tall insectoid Vrylek made their antennae twitch in mockery. Even the graceful Altheri, with their silver eyes and flawless faces, smiled politely yet glanced away as if ashamed to look at him too long. Primitive creatures, one alien muttered in his own tongue. The translator drone hummed, but the words were clear enough. Scars, and they do not even heal properly. How crude. Surely such a being is unfit to stand among us. Darius heard it all. He always did, he said nothing. Words, he had learned, did not matter much to those who had never fought with their lives on the line. He stood silent, his eyes steady, his chest rising and falling with the calm rhythm of a man used to being underestimated. It was not the first time aliens mocked him, nor would it be the last. The coalition was young compared to the vast history of some of its members. Humanity had only joined recently, after proving itself as a spacefaring race. Earth's ships were not the fastest, its weapons not the most advanced, and its culture not as old as the stars. But what humans brought was something less easy to measure. They brought stubbornness. When planets fell into despair, humans rebuilt. When disasters struck, humans adapted. And when enemies came, humans fought with a ferocity born from centuries of surviving against odds that should have destroyed them. Darius Kane embodied that history. He had been born in the city, ruins of Earth after a resource war had left, nations broken. His childhood had been marked by fire alarms and ration lines. He had grown up knowing what it meant to go hungry, what it meant to see fear in his mother's eyes when the sky turned red with bombing raids. The scars he bore were not only from war but from survival itself. By the time he was old enough to enlist, fighting had already shaped him. He had served in the Orbital Defense Corps, guarding Earth's fragile sky against raiders who saw humanity as easy prey. In one of those battles, shrapnel had cut across his face and fire had seared his arms. He could have let medics smooth away the scars with gene therapy. He refused. "They remind me of who I am," he had said. And so, the mark stayed. Now, among the stars, those same marks became the focus of ridicule. As the delegates spoke of trade routes and joint fleets, Darius listened with quiet patience. The human seat in the coalition was small, tucked in the back as if Earth was a guest rather than an equal. He watched the aliens speak of unity and strategy, all the while knowing that most of them saw humanity as little more than a child race. Useful, perhaps, but not worthy of respect. And still he remained calm. Because scars told stories, and Darius knew stories mattered more than appearances. After the session ended, he left the grand hall and walked through the shining corridors of the station. The floor glowed softly underfoot, designed to impress visitors. Ships of dozens of species filled the docking bays, their hulls reflecting strange lights across the walls. The air smelled faintly of oils, spices, and chemicals, each scent belonging to a different people. A pair of Altheri officers passed him, their voices light and smooth like music. One of them tilted her head toward Darius as they walked by. "Is that him? The human captain?" "Yes," the other whispered. "Look at his face. How barbaric. Surely they have the technology to hide such marks. And yet he wears them openly." Darius walked past without a word, his boots echoing against the polished metal. He had learned long ago that pride was not shown in arguments, but in actions. Later, aboard his small human vessel docked at the edge of the fleet, he sat in the command chair, staring at the dark curve of a planet below. His crew, just 30 men and women, were busy at their stations. They were younger than him, most of them wide-eyed at the sight of alien ships and stars they had never seen before. They looked to him for guidance, Captain, one of them asked quietly. Do they always look at us that way? Darius turned his scarred face toward the young ensign. He saw in the boy's eyes the same uncertainty he had once felt, the same question of whether humanity truly belonged among these great civilizations. Yes, Darius said simply. His voice was low, steady. They do, and they will for some time. The ensign frowned. Doesn't it bother you, sir? The way they talk? Darius leaned back, his eyes still fixed on the stars. He let the silence stretch for a moment before answering. It used to, he admitted, but scars don't make us less. They make us more. Each one means we stood, we fought, we survived. These others may not understand that yet, but one day they will. The crew fell silent, listening. Even those pretending to work at their stations paused. His words carried the weight of lived truth, not just belief. Darius tapped the scar across his cheek. This one was from when we defended the orbital platform against raiders. We were outnumbered, outgunned, but we held. Not because we had the best ships, but because we refused to fall. These scars are proof of what we are capable of. The young ensign nodded slowly, his doubt replaced with pride. Around the bridge, other crew members sat straighter, their eyes sharper. Far across the docking ring, alien envoys continued their laughter and their dismissive talk. They spoke of humans as if they were temporary guests in the galaxy. But in the quiet of his ship, Captain Darius Kane knew something else. He knew scars were not marks of shame. They were reminders that when the galaxy tested humanity, it would find more than soft words and polished appearances. It would find survivors, fighters, builders, and one day soon, when true danger arrived, those who mocked him would learn that the human with scars was not to be pitied. He was to be remembered. The great space station of the Coalition floated like a jewel above the gas giant Vanos, its silver rings glowing with light from hundreds of docking bays. It was here that the yearly fleet exercises were held. Every member species sent their best ships, their finest commanders, and their proudest warriors to prove their strength and unity. To the Coalition, it was a tradition of honor. To Captain Darius Kane, it was another test, one where humans were expected to fail. The briefing chamber was crowded with alien commanders. The tall insectoid Vrilek stood in groups, their wings folded tight, their black eyes glittering. The Altheri leaned gracefully against the walls, their silver uniforms shining. The Karith, with their scaled arms crossed, filled the room with a faint hiss every time they spoke. And in the back, Darius Kane stood with his small human detachment. 30 crew members, 2 old corvettes, and 1 captain with scars. That was all humanity had to offer in comparison to fleets of hundreds. The main speaker, Admiral Jirek of the Vrilek, raised his thin arms and clicked his mandibles. Commanders, the exercises will begin shortly. Each fleet will be tested against simulated threats designed to measure speed, strategy, and discipline. Our purpose is to build unity. Yet some must still prove they are worthy of standing among us. Several alien eyes turned toward Darius. The meaning was clear. Darius remained silent, his jaw set, his gaze steady. When the briefing ended, each fleet received its assigned scenario. The Altheri were given a test of coordination, moving their ships through a hazardous asteroid belt. The Korith were tasked with defending a trade convoy against simulated pirate attacks. The Vrilek had to demonstrate rapid strikes on enemy stations. The humans' assignment appeared last on the screen. Scenario: defense of mining colony. Gamma 47, enemy. Automated war drone swarm. Estimated odds of survival, 12%. A low murmur swept through the chamber. The Altheri raised elegant brows. The Korith hissed with amusement. The Vrilek made a sound like dry laughter. A human challenge indeed, Admiral Jirek said. His mandibles clicked together. We will see if scars mean more than decoration. Back aboard his ship, the Resolute, Darius gathered his crew in the briefing room. The young ensign from earlier looked nervous, his hands clenched behind his back. Others wore the same uneasy expression. They gave us an impossible mission, didn't they? One asked. Yes, Darius said simply. They expect us to fail. They think humans will break. They chose the hardest test because they believe we don't belong here. The room fell silent. Then Darius leaned forward, his eyes sharp, which means we have a chance to prove them wrong. He tapped the screen, showing the mining colony Gamma 47. It was a lonely outpost on the edge of the system, a cluster of steel towers on a barren rock with little more than a shield dome for defense. The drones, fast armed and countless, would come in waves. Direct confrontation will destroy us, Darius continued. We don't have the firepower to match. But we do have something else. On what, Captain? The ensign asked. Ingenuity, creativity, the will to survive. He pointed to the colony systems. The drones expect us to sit behind shields and trade fire. We won't. We'll use the colony itself as our weapon. We'll rewire mining lasers into defense turrets. We'll overload the shield generators to create pulse waves that knock drones off course. And when they least expect it, we'll take the fight to them. The crew exchanged looks, their fear turning slowly into determination. The simulation began. On the giant tactical display of the Coalition command chamber, the human fleet appeared small, 2 corvettes orbiting the mining colony, facing a swarm of red icons rushing in from the edge of the system. Alien commanders leaned forward in their seats, some smiling with pity, others waiting to see how quickly the humans would be destroyed. Inside the Resolute, alarms blared. First wave incoming! Darius stood at the center of the bridge, calm and steady. Activate Plan Alpha. Redirect mining laser arrays. Set shield generators to overload cycle. On the surface of the colony, massive drilling lasers meant for cutting stone pivoted upward, firing beams of light into the approaching swarm. Shields flickered, then pulsed outward like a wave, slamming into drones and scattering them. Several drones spun out of control, smashing into each other. The crew cheered, but Darius raised a hand. Stay focused. That was just the beginning. Wave after wave came. The drones adapted quickly, swarming in tighter formations. The human ships darted between the colony towers, drawing fire away from the shields. Captain, we can't hold much longer, a lieutenant called. Darius's scarred face remained calm. Then we changed the game. Ready boarding teams, the crew stared. Boarding drones? No alien fleet had ever attempted such a reckless maneuver, but Darius had spent his life fighting battles where odds were against him. Small shuttles burst from the corvettes, weaving through enemy fire. Marines in armored suits latched onto drones, cutting them open and planting charges inside. Explosions lit up the void as machines turned against their own formations. The aliens watching the simulation fell silent. The final wave arrived, a massive drone carrier, bristling with weapons. The human corvettes were battered, shields flickering, hulls scarred. The colony's defenses were nearly destroyed. Captain, the ensign whispered, we can't stop that. Darius's eyes narrowed. We don't stop it. We break it. He ordered all remaining charges loaded onto the last shuttle. Then, without hesitation, he took the pilot's seat himself. Sir, you can't... The ensign began. I can, Darius said firmly, and I will. The shuttle launched, weaving through enemy fire until it slammed directly into the carrier's hull. For a moment, the command chamber erupted with shocked gasps. Then the screen flared white as the carrier exploded, torn apart from within. When the light faded, the human fleet was bloodied, but alive. The colony still stood. Against impossible odds, the humans had survived. In the Coalition chamber, silence hung heavy. No one mocked. No one whispered. Every alien eye was fixed on the scarred human who had led his people to victory. Admiral Jirek finally spoke, his mandibles clicking slowly. Unexpected, resourceful, reckless, and yet effective. The Altheri delegate bowed her head. Perhaps scars do not show weakness. Perhaps they show strength. Darius said nothing. He didn't need to. The story had been told not with words but with actions. Later, back aboard the Resolute, his crew erupted in cheers. The young ensign approached him with shining eyes. Captain, they'll never forget this. You showed them what humans can do. Darius gave a small smile, the first in a long time. His scars caught the light of the stars. They won't remember me, he said quietly. They'll remember us, humanity, and that's enough. The celebrations of the human victory in the Coalition exercises were short-lived. While other species continued their drills and simulations, an uneasy tension began to ripple through the station. It started with reports, small anomalies in the outer systems, strange blips on long-range sensors, and the sudden disappearance of several minor trading vessels. Darius Kane noticed it first, as always. His eyes scanned the reports with a careful, experienced patience. The anomalies were too regular to be natural, too widespread to be simple malfunctions. Something was moving, something intelligent, and it was heading toward the heart of the coalition. Meanwhile, the alien fleets were busy boasting. Vrylek commanders displayed their maneuvers with pride. The Altheri discussed new coordination protocols, and the Korath whispered criticisms of humanity, still smarting from their earlier failure. None of them had noticed the threat quietly building outside the simulation fields. Darius moved quietly among them, listening and observing. His crew, fresh from the recent test of human ingenuity, looked at him with confidence. They had survived impossible odds, and he knew that spirit would carry them through whatever came next. "Captain," Lieutenant Mira called, pointing at the holomap. "This cluster of signals, it's moving faster than anything we've seen. It's like a storm across the system." Darius leaned in. The red blips pulsed rapidly on the display, converging from multiple directions. "It's not a storm," he said. "It's an army." Mira's eyes widened. "An army of what?" Darius didn't answer immediately. He had learned long ago that panic was more dangerous than the enemy itself. Instead, he tapped the display. "Whatever it is, it's heading straight for the coalition fleets. And if we don't act fast, hundreds of ships and countless lives will be lost." At the coalition council chamber, alarms began to sound. The command AI projected live readings of the advancing threat. Thousands of autonomous drones moving as one, calculating, adapting, and attacking anything in their path. The alien commanders froze. Many had never faced an enemy that did not negotiate, that did not speak, that did not fear. Their carefully rehearsed fleet maneuvers meant nothing against an opponent that moved unpredictably and without hesitation. Admiral Zirek's mandibles clicked in alarm. This is not part of any drill." An Altheri commander, silver eyes wide, added, "These readings, they suggest a machine intelligence designed for war and efficiency. No biological species could have created this alone." In the chaos, the council turned to humanity. The small human fleet had survived the previous test against overwhelming odds. Perhaps they could survive this too. Every pair of alien eyes now rested on Darius Kane. Back on the Resolute, Darius called his crew to action. They moved with precision, their confidence built from the recent exercises carrying them forward. "Prepare all systems for battle," he ordered. "Shields, weapons, boarding shuttles. We may not have the numbers, but we have something they cannot predict. Humans think differently." A young ensign asked nervously. "Sir, they're massive. Hundreds of drones, thousands even. Can we really stand against that?" Darius looked at the boy, his scarred face calm. "We will survive, not because we are invincible, but because we refuse to be defeated. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us dangerous." The crew nodded, inspired by his words. Even in the shadow of a seemingly unstoppable enemy, they found courage. The first wave of the machine fleet entered the system. Bright flashes of energy streaked across the void as drones attacked coalition patrols. Many alien ships were destroyed before they even understood what had hit them. Panic spread as fleets tried to respond with familiar tactics. The drones adapted instantly, their movements precise and overwhelming. Darius watched from the bridge of the Resolute, analyzing every pattern. "They are fast but predictable in their logic," he muttered. "If we can break their formation, we can force them to make mistakes." He called for the mining colony Gamma 47 to be reinforced. "Bring every resource we have to bear," he said. "We survived once because we thought differently. We'll do it again. Redirect power to shields and weapons and use every structure in the colony to our advantage." The crew moved like a well-oiled machine. Shields were rerouted, energy pulses prepared, and turrets aimed at choke points in the swarm. Small boarding teams readied shuttles, knowing that close combat might be the only way to turn the tide. As the drones approached, Darius made his first daring move. Instead of waiting behind the shields, he directed the corvettes to split, creating false targets and drawing part of the swarm away. The drones, efficient but rigid in logic, followed predictably. The colony's modified laser arrays cut into the divided group, destroying dozens in seconds. The alien commanders observing through live feeds were stunned. Even the proud Vrylek could only gape at the humans' unconventional tactics. Unorthodox, one whispered. But it works. The second wave hit harder. Darius had predicted part of the enemy's logic, but not all. One massive drone carrier emerged, bristling with energy weapons larger than any ship the Coalition had seen. It swept toward the colony, tearing apart satellites and small patrol ships. "Captain," Lieutenant Mira called, voice tense. "We can't stop that alone." Darius's scarred face remained calm. "Then we take it inside. Prepare boarding teams." "I'm going with them." Shuttles launched from the corvettes, weaving through heavy fire. Darius led the first, maneuvering expertly as enemy drones tried to intercept them. Explosions flashed around the small craft, but he never wavered. The human team boarded the carrier, planting charges and disabling key systems. From the bridge of the Resolute, Darius watched the carrier begin to falter. Energy weapons faltered, and the drone's formation began to break. The human ingenuity that had saved them in the simulation was now saving lives in real combat. The final confrontation was close and dangerous. Darius realized that simply surviving would not be enough. The machine intelligence would continue to adapt, learning from every battle. To stop it, he had to strike at its core. "Prepare the final boarding shuttle," he ordered. "This ends now." The crew looked at him, fear and trust mingling in their eyes. Darius nodded once, sharply. "We've survived before. We will survive again." Focus, move, and trust each other. With precise timing, the shuttle launched. Darius himself piloted it, weaving past laser fire until the massive carrier loomed before him. Boarding clamps latched onto the hull and human marines swarmed inside. The corridor lights reflected on his scarred face, and he moved with calm, deadly precision. Cutting through automated defenses, charges were planted at key systems, and a final pulse detonated, disabling the carrier completely. Darius and his team barely escaped before the massive ship exploded, sending fragments and drones tumbling into space. Back on the bridge of the Resolute, the crew erupted in cheers. They had not only survived, they had saved the colony and stopped the first wave of the threat. The alien fleets that had watched in horror now looked at humanity with something they had never shown before: respect. Admiral Jirek's mandibles clicked slowly. "Remarkable. Human logic, combined with courage, is unpredictable," an Altheri commander said softly. "Perhaps we underestimated them. Scars are not marks of weakness. They are symbols of experience and survival." Darius said nothing, only watching the stars outside. The battle was not over, but a lesson had been learned. Humanity could adapt, fight, and survive in ways the galaxy had not yet seen. Later, in the quiet of the Resolute, Darius spoke to his crew. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The galaxy will test us again, and it will be harder next time. But remember this: survival is not about strength alone. It is about thinking, acting, and refusing to surrender. Scarred or not, we are human, and humans endure." The crew nodded, understanding the weight of his words. They had followed a captain who led not by fear but by example. They had seen a human stand where others would hesitate, and they knew that together they could survive anything. And in that moment, somewhere across the Coalition fleets, alien commanders whispered Darius Kane's name for the first time, not in mockery but in respect. The Coalition fleets were scattered, damaged, and shaken. Systems that had once gleamed with pride now floated silent, blackened shells in the void. The machine intelligence had shown its strength, and even the most confident alien commanders were uneasy. Amid the chaos, one ship moved with purpose, the human corvette Resolute, led by Captain Darius Kane. His crew, battle-hardened and loyal, followed him without hesitation. Their recent victories in exercises and the first wave of the threat had shown them that survival was possible, even against impossible odds. Darius knew the key now. The machine swarm would not stop until it controlled the entire system. And if they were to have any chance at survival, they had to take the fight to the enemy. From the bridge, Darius observed the battlefield. Thousands of drones swarmed the Coalition fleets, moving with precision, cutting down ships that hesitated. Alien commanders barked orders, trying desperately to maintain formation. But the drones adapted faster than any biological fleet could anticipate. "Captain," Lieutenant Mira called, pointing at the holomap. "They're advancing on the central fleet. If we don't act, we'll lose the station and the command ships. We're outnumbered." "We can't," Darius cut her off with a calm voice. "We can't fight them like everyone else. That's exactly what they expect. We're going to do something no one else will dare. He turned to the young ensign, eyes sharp and determined. This is our moment. Get the boarding teams ready. We're going inside the swarm. The plan was reckless, even by human standards. They would split their corvettes, create a diversion, and board the largest enemy carriers. Small teams would plant charges to destroy the core systems, while Darius himself would lead the main boarding assault. It was dangerous, almost suicidal. But Darius knew that survival often required taking risks others were too cautious to attempt. The crew moved with precision. Shuttles were prepped, weapons loaded, and systems checked. Every human aboard the Resolute understood the stakes. The scars on Darius's face were more than marks of past battles. They were symbols of determination and courage. And now, the entire galaxy would witness what those scars had prepared him for. As the Resolute emerged from a debris field, the swarm of drones immediately targeted them. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space. Darius maneuvered the corvette with expert precision, evading attacks while drawing a portion of the swarm away from the larger fleet. Captain, shields at 40%, the engineer called. Keep steady, Darius ordered. We've done worse and survived. We can do this. Shuttles launched into the heart of the enemy formation. Darius piloted one himself, weaving through fire with calm focus. Boarding clamps latched onto the nearest carrier. Inside, the corridors were dark, metallic, and hostile. Drones patrolled, their mechanical movements precise and deadly. Darius led his team through the halls, cutting down enemy machines with coordinated strikes. Explosions echoed through the carrier as charges were planted on critical systems. Outside, the smaller human ships engaged in a coordinated assault, distracting the drones and providing openings for boarding teams. Every move was calculated yet fluid. Unlike the rigid precision of the enemy, the humans adapted in real time using intuition, experience, and creativity. Darius moved like a shadow through the carrier, directing his marines, disabling energy grids, and clearing paths toward the core. His scars caught the dim light of the corridors, reflecting a life of survival, of battles fought and won. Each mark told a story of resilience. As they reached the central core, Darius activated the final sequence. The charges were set. Everyone clear? He asked. Nods confirmed readiness. He pressed the detonator. The explosion rocked the carrier from within, collapsing corridors and disabling the ship's systems. Drones outside faltered as the swarm's logic was disrupted. The human crews used this opening to strike again, turning the tide of the battle. The aliens observing from the remaining fleet could hardly believe what they were seeing. The humans, tiny in numbers, scarred and battered, were leading the offensive against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. This is impossible, one Vrylik commander hissed, wings trembling with shock. Look at their coordination, an Altheri officer whispered. It's unlike anything we've seen. They think differently. They adapt. For the first time, many alien fleets realized that strength was not only measured in numbers, technology, or appearance. The human warriors' scars, their past hardships, and their survival instincts had forged something far more dangerous than mere skill. They had forged resilience, courage, and ingenuity. The battle continued, wave after wave of drones attacking. Yet the humans pressed on. Darius led a second boarding assault, this time targeting the largest remaining carrier. His crew moved like a single organism, each action synchronized and decisive. When the final charges detonated, the enemy formation began to collapse. Drones collided with each other, systems overloaded, and the swarm faltered. The coalition fleets, inspired by the human success, rallied. Alien ships attacked with renewed confidence, pushing the surviving drones back. Darius remained on the bridge of the Resolute, guiding his crew through the chaos. His voice was calm, firm, and full of authority. Focus, adapt, fight together. This is what humanity does. Hours passed. The swarm's numbers dwindled. Coalition fleets repaired their formations, and alien commanders began to follow human tactics, improvising instead of relying on rigid patterns. What had started as a desperate gamble became a turning point in the battle. At last, the machine intelligence, weakened and disoriented, retreated from the system. The coalition fleets had survived not just by force, but through human ingenuity and courage. In the aftermath, silence fell. Ships floated in space, some damaged, some intact. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Admiral Zyrek's voice broke the stillness. Remarkable, he said slowly. Human courage, human logic. I underestimated it. An Altheri officer added, they led by example. They risked everything and showed what humans are capable of. Darius did not respond. He didn't need to. The victory spoke for itself. Back aboard the Resolute, the crew celebrated quietly, their energy tempered by exhaustion. Darius walked among them, acknowledging each member with a nod or a brief word of praise. The young ensign approached again, eyes shining. Captain, you led us. You risked everything. They'll remember this. Darius shook his head. Not me. They'll remember what we did. Humanity. The courage, the teamwork, the refusal to surrender. That's what they'll remember. And that's enough. He paused, looking out at the stars. Scars aren't weaknesses. They're proof of survival. Proof that we endure. Proof that we can face the impossible and still rise. The crew nodded, understanding the truth in his words. They had followed a leader whose scars were not marks of pain, but badges of resilience. A warrior who taught them that courage, determination, and creativity could triumph over overwhelming odds. Elsewhere in the coalition fleets, alien commanders whispered the name Darius Kane. Not in mockery, not in disdain, but in astonishment and respect. The human warrior with scars had led his people to victory, and the galaxy had taken notice. Darius did not seek glory. He had only done what humans always did: survive, adapt, and protect those who could not protect themselves. But in doing so, he had shown the galaxy a truth long forgotten, sometimes the smallest. Most underestimated beings could change the course of history. As the Resolute drifted among the recovering fleets, Darius Kane allowed himself a rare smile. The battle was won, but the war for survival and respect in the galaxy was far from over. Yet one thing was certain: humanity had made its mark, and scars, far from hiding weakness, had become the symbol of enduring strength. The galaxy was quiet but not peaceful. The machine intelligence had retreated, leaving scars on fleets and stations alike, but it would return, and the coalition knew it. Ships were being repaired, drones dismantled, and strategies rewritten. Every species realized that survival was not guaranteed, and that the human warriors had changed the rules of engagement forever. Among the recovering fleets, Captain Darius Kane remained a constant presence. Scarred, steady, and calm, he moved through the stations and ships like a shadow, not seeking attention but observing carefully. He knew the galaxy would judge humanity by actions, not words, and he intended to show the universe what humans could endure. In the council chamber, alien leaders finally called a formal meeting. The coalition had witnessed human ingenuity firsthand, and whispers of Darius Kane's actions had spread like wildfire. The Altheri, Korath, and Vrylek delegates all gathered, their expressions a mix of awe, uncertainty, and respect. Admiral Jirek spoke first. We have underestimated humanity. Their courage, their thinking, their ability to act under impossible pressure. It surpasses anything we have seen. Captain Kane stepped forward. Darius moved through the chamber, his broad shoulders straight and eyes calm. His scars, once mocked, now reflected the weight of his experiences. Every mark told a story of survival, of battles fought, of courage earned. For the first time, those who had laughed at him now looked at him in admiration. Your actions have saved countless lives. Jirek continued. Not just your crew, but the entire coalition fleet. You have proven that humans are not to be dismissed. Darius nodded, keeping his words measured. We did not act alone. Every human crew member, every Marine, every officer contributed. Humanity survives by working together, by thinking differently, by refusing to surrender when the odds are impossible. My name is not important. What matters is what we accomplished. The chamber remained silent for a moment, absorbing the truth of his words. Alien delegates whispered among themselves, finally realizing that strength was not only measured in technology or numbers. Humans had something else: creativity, resilience, and courage forged from hardship. An Altheri officer finally spoke. Perhaps the scars we once mocked are not flaws, but signs of endurance, signs that humans face hardship and emerge stronger. Captain Kane, your deeds will be remembered. Back aboard the Resolute, Darius allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The stars outside the viewport shone silently, indifferent to the struggles of mortals, yet filled with the potential for greatness. His crew gathered around him, exhausted but proud. Lieutenant Mira spoke softly. Captain, You led us through impossible odds. They will tell stories of what humans did today. They will remember us." Darius looked at his crew, his scarred face softening into a small smile. "They will remember not me, not just my scars, but the actions we took together. The galaxy will learn what humanity is capable of, and that is what matters." The crew nodded, understanding that their victory was more than just survival. It was a declaration that humans, despite being young in the galaxy, could stand with the greatest civilizations and not be ignored. In the days that followed, reports spread across the coalition fleets. Alien commanders wrote of human strategy, bravery, and adaptability. Scholars recorded the actions of Darius Kane and his crew. Even the smallest stations in remote sectors heard the story. A human captain, scarred and underestimated, had led his crew to triumph against impossible odds. Where once the galaxy had mocked humanity for its perceived weaknesses, it now recognized something far more powerful. Humans could endure, adapt, and overcome. They could act with courage where others hesitated, and in doing so reshape the way the galaxy measured strength. Darius did not seek recognition. He continued to train his crew, repair ships, and prepare for the inevitable return of the machine intelligence. Yet everywhere he went, the whispers followed. The scarred human captain who had stood where others fell, the one who had turned desperation into victory, the one whose actions would be remembered for generations. A young ensign approached him one evening aboard the station. "Captain, do you think people will really remember your name?" Darius tapped the scar on his cheek lightly. "Perhaps. But names are not as important as deeds. If we act with courage, with intelligence, and with determination, that is enough. The galaxy will remember what humans can do, and that is a name greater than any one of us." The ensign nodded, understanding that true recognition comes not from titles or honors, but from actions that inspire others. The human crew of the Resolute spent months repairing their corvettes and preparing for the next threat. Even in the quiet, Darius taught them lessons not found in books: how to adapt quickly, how to trust instincts, how to survive when everything seems lost. Every lesson carried the weight of experience, every word a reminder that scars were not marks of weakness but symbols of endurance. Other species began to emulate human tactics. Fleet strategies changed. No longer would the coalition underestimate its newest members. Humanity had carved a place among the stars, not by boasting but by proving that courage, creativity, and resilience could overcome any obstacle. Time passed, and Darius Kane became more than a name whispered in awe. He became a legend. Across systems, human and alien alike spoke of the captain whose scars had once been mocked, but whose deeds had forced the galaxy to respect his people. Stories of his bravery were shared in academies, training halls, and even among young recruits who had never seen a human warship. But Darius remained grounded. He did not seek glory or fame. Every mission, every battle, every survival was a step toward teaching humanity's true value. Strength comes not only from power, but from the will to endure, the courage to act, and the ability to inspire others to rise alongside you. One quiet evening, standing on the observation deck of the station above the gas giant, Darius looked at the stars. The scars on his face reflected the light, a testament to battles past. He thought of the crew who had trusted him, the humans who had fought alongside him, and the countless lives saved through courage and ingenuity. He knew the machine intelligence would return someday. And when it did, humanity would be ready. They would face it not as individuals, but as a people who had learned that survival was more than technology. It was creativity, resilience, and the refusal to surrender. Darius Kane's scars would remain, as would the stories of his deeds. And across the galaxy, those who had once mocked him would never forget the human who stood tall, led with courage, and showed that even a single determined species could change the course of history. The stars seemed indifferent, yet in their light, Darius saw hope. Humanity had proven itself, not through perfection, not through arrogance, but through endurance, creativity, and courage. The galaxy had learned that scars were not marks of weakness, but of strength, and that humans, no matter how young or underestimated, were a force to be reckoned with. As the fleets prepared for the next chapter of their shared history, Darius Kane stood quietly, a figure of resilience, leadership, and determination. His crew looked to him, the galaxy watched, and a legend was born. A human warrior, scarred but unbroken, had carved his name into the stars, and the galaxy would remember it forever.